Tariffs are everywhere in the news. Governments say they protect jobs and local industries. Critics say they raise prices and start trade wars. But what exactly is a tariff and who actually pays for it? Let's break it down. Section 1. What is a tariff? A tariff is simply a tax placed on goods imported from another country. Imagine American bread costs $3, while similar bread imported from China costs only $1. Naturally, many consumers would choose the cheaper imported bread. That creates a problem for American bakeries because they struggle to compete. So the U.S. government introduces a $3 tariff on the imported bread. The $1 loaf now effectively costs $4 to import, while American bread still costs $3. Suddenly, the local product looks more attractive. That's the basic purpose of a tariff: make foreign goods more expensive, giving domestic producers an advantage. But there's an important detail. The foreign country doesn't simply send a check to the U.S. government. The tariff is normally paid by the company importing the product, and some or all of that additional cost can eventually be passed on to consumers. Section 2. Types of tariffs. There are two common ways tariffs can work. The first is a specific tariff. This is a fixed charge. Imagine the government introduces a $3 tariff on every imported loaf of bread. If the bread costs $2, the tariff is still $3. If it costs $100, the tariff is still $3. The second type is an ad valorem tariff. That sounds complicated, but it simply means a percentage of the product's value. Suppose the tariff is 20%. A $10 product faces a $2 tariff. A $100 product faces a $20 tariff. And when you hear politicians talking about tariffs of 100% or even 200%, the same principle applies. A 100% tariff on a $10 product adds $10. A 200% tariff adds $20. So before other costs, that $10 product becomes $30. Governments can also restrict trade through quotas and regulations, but unlike tariffs, those measures don't directly impose an import tax. Section 3. Why do governments use tariffs? Tariffs can have advantages. The first is protecting domestic industries. A famous example is Harley-Davidson. By the early 1980s, the American motorcycle manufacturer was struggling against Japanese competitors such as Honda, Yamaha, Suzuki, and Kawasaki. In 1983, the United States introduced higher tariffs on certain imported heavyweight motorcycles. The protection gave Harley-Davidson breathing room to restructure, improve its manufacturing, and become more competitive. By 1987, Harley-Davidson had improved enough that it actually asked for the tariff protection to end early. The second advantage is government revenue. Tariffs are taxes, so they generate money for the government. And third, tariffs can be used as political or economic leverage. A country might threaten tariffs to influence another government's policies or encourage companies to manufacture products domestically. But there's a problem. Companies don't always respond the way governments expect. If imports from China become expensive, for example, a company might not move production back to America. It could simply move production to another lower-cost country, such as Vietnam. And this brings us to the disadvantages. Section 4. Who really pays? One of the biggest criticisms of tariffs is higher prices. Imagine a Mexican bakery sells bread to an American importer. The U.S. introduces a tariff on that bread. The importer now has an additional cost. What happens next? The importer or retailer may absorb some of it, but they can also raise prices. Ultimately, American consumers can end up paying part of the tariff through more expensive products. And it doesn't stop there. Imagine an American sandwich shop relies on imported bread. its ingredient costs suddenly increase. Now the shop has a choice: absorb the additional cost and accept lower profits, or increase the price of its sandwiches. So tariffs can affect businesses that aren't directly competing with foreign companies at all. There's another danger: retaliation. If one country introduces tariffs, another country may respond with tariffs of its own. Then the first country retaliates again, and eventually you have a trade war. Section 5. Do tariffs actually work? The answer is complicated. Sometimes. Imagine two countries, Cookie Land and Pie Land. Cookie Land makes amazing cookies. Pie Land makes amazing pies. They trade with each other, and consumers on both sides benefit. Then Cookie Land decides its local pie companies need protection, so it places tariffs on pies from Pie Land. Imported pies become more expensive, and people begin buying more locally produced pies. At first, the policy appears successful. Local pie makers gain customers. But there are consequences. Consumers who still want Pie Land's products pay higher prices. Businesses using imported pies face higher costs. And without as much foreign competition, some local producers have less pressure to improve their products. Then Pie Land retaliates. It introduces tariffs on cookies from Cookie Land. Now Cookie Land's cookie companies lose customers overseas. Businesses on both sides face higher costs. Consumers have fewer choices. And prices rise. The policy that originally protected one industry has now created problems for several others. That's the fundamental difficulty with tariffs. You can protect one part of an economy while unintentionally hurting another. Section 6. When tariffs work and when they don't. There are examples where trade protection has helped industries develop. South Korea protected its domestic automobile industry as it developed during the second half of the 20th century. Companies such as Hyundai and Kia eventually became major international competitors. But protection alone wasn't responsible. Investment, industrial policy, technological development, and export competition all played important roles. Now compare that with the US-China trade war that began in 2018. The United States introduced tariffs on hundreds of billions of dollars of Chinese imports. China retaliated, including with tariffs targeting American agricultural products. Chinese exporters faced barriers to the American market. American importers and consumers faced higher costs. And American farmers were hit by Chinese retaliation. There was another unexpected consequence. Companies looking to reduce their dependence on Chinese manufacturing began shifting some production elsewhere. And one of the countries that benefited was Vietnam. In other words, tariffs designed partly to encourage production away from China didn't necessarily bring all that production back to America. Some of it simply moved somewhere else. And that reveals why tariffs are so difficult to judge. They can protect strategic industries. They can generate government revenue. They can give developing industries time to become competitive. And they can provide governments with negotiating leverage. But they can also increase prices, disrupt supply chains, provoke retaliation, and protect inefficient businesses from competition. So, are tariffs good or bad? There isn't a universal answer. The more important questions are: what industry is being protected? How long will the protection last? Who will absorb the additional cost? And how will other countries respond? Because when you hear that a government has introduced a tariff on another country, remember one thing: the story doesn't end at the border. Eventually, that tariff can reach factories, farms, businesses, and potentially the price you see when you walk into a shop. And that is why something that sounds like a simple tax on foreign goods can end up affecting almost everyone.